Hello everyone and welcome to this session on scalp. The scalp is just uh, not only the skin but the entire 5-layer soft tissue which covers the cranial vault. Okay, what is the extent of the scalp? The scalp extends anteriorly from, if this is the face, the extent of the scalp anteriorly is up to the supraorbital margins. Up to the supraorbital margins. If you are looking from the lateral aspect, laterally it extends to the temporal lines. You will be studying in the norma lateralis what are the temporal lines. So then what about the skin of the temple? This area on the side which is above the ear is called as temple. So what about the skin in the temple? They say that the skin of the chin is pulled here up to the temple. The word temple means time. The word temple means time. So the graying of the hair starts in the region of the temple, and that's how a person comes to know that now it is time for him to retire, time for him to slow down. That is indication of time. So therefore, if you see the graying of the chin, the hairs on the chin, and graying of the hairs of the temple, it starts at the same time. So many people you see who have black hair here, but they have gray hair here, and their beard is also becoming gray because it's the skin of the chin which is on the top. So the scalp extends to up to the supraorbital margins anteriorly. The temporal lines on the lateral aspect, okay, and posteriorly, if you are looking at the skull on the posterior aspect, the posteriorly there are the superior nuchal lines. Posteriorly, there are superior nuchal lines starting from the external occipital protuberance. These temporal lines are also called as superior temporal. Okay, so superior temporal lines laterally, the um, superior nuchal lines posteriorly, and supraorbital margins anteriorly. That's what the extent of scalp is. Now let us talk about the 5 layers of scalp. The 5 layers of the scalp. What are the 5 layers of the scalp? The mnemonic for the 5 layers of the scalp is there in the scalp name itself. Okay. S C A L P. SCALP. In the name itself is the what lies in each layer. S stands for skin. S stands for skin. Skin which is hairy. Skin which is hairy. Okay. And because of this hairy skin, there is mm, because of the hairy skin, there will be lot of sebaceous glands. There will be lot of sebaceous glands, and that can lead to sebaceous cysts also. That can lead to sebaceous cysts also. Okay. So skin of the scalp is hairy. Okay. It is also thick. Normally hairy skin is thin, but it is also hairy and thick. Hairy and thick. So this is a rare combination which is seen in the skin of the scalp. Now second is connective tissue. Second layer is connective tissue. This connective tissue which is fibrous. connective tissue which is fibrous. Normally when we talk about the connective tissue, or this is below the skin is a superficial fascia which is fatty. But here we are seeing connective tissue which is fibrous, superficial fascia which is fibrous. So we say that fibrous connective tissue. Now what happens in case of this fibrous connective tissue is the fibers, they are very thick. They are very thick and they attach the skin to the lower layer, to the lower layer. So this is how the thick, this is how the layers are, the fibrous layers are. And then the blood vessels are passing through it. The blood vessels are passing through it. So I see a blood vessel here, I see a blood vessel here. Now what happens is because these fibrous layers are so thick, the blood vessel is not able to retract. The blood vessel is not able to retract in case the blood vessel is cut, and therefore it leads to bleeding. It leads to bleeding. It leads to bleeding, and this bleeding stops only by pressure. So pressure is needed because the blood vessels will not contract by themselves. The blood vessels will not contract by themselves because their walls are attached to the fibers. Their walls are attached to the fibers. The next layer is aponeurosis. Next layer is aponeurosis. Aponeurosis plus muscle. There is a muscle. So this if this is the uh, if this is the skull, okay, and this is the anterior aspect and this is the posterior aspect, the aponeurosis, you know, it it is attached to the skull bone. It is attached to the skull bone. Hmm? It is attached to the superior temporal line. It is attached to the external occipital protuber. Okay, and it is the aponeurosis will be somewhere somehow like this, attached like this. Hmm? But it receives this. I said aponeurosis plus this muscle. This muscle is called as occipitofrontalis. Occipitofrontalis. Now, occipitofrontalis muscle, occipitofrontalis muscle, the attachment is very interesting. The posteriorly, this muscle is attached to the superior nuchal line. Okay. Posteriorly, this muscle is attached to the superior nuchal line. That is fine. But anteriorly, what happens is this muscle, instead of getting attached to the skull bone, gets attached to the skin. Suppose this is the skin. Okay. Then this is the aponeurosis. This is the aponeurosis. And posteriorly, this is the occipital belly. This is the occipital belly of the muscle, and this is the frontal belly. That means the arrangement, please understand, this is the skull, and this is the aponeurosis, the layer 3. The layer 3. Layer 1 is skin, 2 is connective tissue, which is fibrous. And aponeurosis, and there are muscles. So muscle has a posterior belly called as occipital belly, anterior belly called as frontal belly. The muscle is called as occipitofrontalis muscle. This muscle, occipital belly, is attached to the nuchal lines. The occipital belly, it is very small and it is attached to the nuchal line. The superior nuchal line, it is attached to the lateral two-thirds of the superior nuchal line. Now frontal belly, instead of getting attached to the skull, it gets attached to the skin. It gets attached to the skin. Therefore, what happens is these lower layers, if it would have got attached here like this, then the lower layers would have got cut off from that of the face. Now what happens is all the lower layers of the face are of the skull are continuous with that of the face. So therefore any bleeding in layer 4 will come on the face, and that we'll discuss when we'll discuss the layer 4. The layer 4 is the loose areolar tissue. Layer 4 is loose areolar tissue. Loose areolar tissue. So layer two was connective tissue which is fibrous, and suddenly below the aponeurosis, we are coming across now loose areolar tissue. Okay, loose areolar tissue. Now what happens is this below that is pericranium. The layer 5 is pericranium. Layer 5 is pericranium. So suppose this is the layer 5. So this, and then below that will be the skull bone. Below that will be the skull bone. So running from this loose areolar tissue are emissary veins. Are emissary veins. Are emissary veins which go inside the skull. So therefore, any infection in the fourth layer can go inside the skull. Inside the skull, it can go inside the skull and cause infection, and therefore this layer is called as the dangerous layer of the skull. Dangerous area of the face is different. Okay, this is the one of the dangerous area of the skull. Now this fourth layer is continuous with that of the face. Therefore, any bleeding in the fourth layer comes down and accumulates around the eye, and that is called as black eye. So a person gets hit on the skull, but there is blackish thing around the eye. That is called as black eye. The fifth layer is pericranium. This pericranium is, loosely attached to the skull bone. It is loosely attached to the skull bone and firmly attached along the sutures. So suppose this is one skull bone and this is the suture. And this is the suture. So the pericranium is very firmly attached at the sutures and then loosely attached like this. Loosely attached like this. And then inside it goes through the suture and continues as endocranium. Continues as endocranium. So sometimes it happens that there is fracture of the skull bone, but pericranium doesn't get teared off. Pericranium is not teared off. So in case of fracture and there is bleeding, the blood will accumulate between the pericranium and the skull bone. Okay, and such a swelling of blood will take shape of that bone, and that is called as cephalohematoma. That is called as cephalohematoma. So I will start again. There are 5 layers of the skull, and the mnemonic of it lies in the name itself. So S is skin, which is hairy and thick. So many times it is asked, write applied anatomy also. So applied anatomy also you can write point wise. So firstly we write anatomy, and in the anatomy we say that the skull, the first layer is skin, which is hairy and thick. So what is the applied anatomy? This is the applied anatomy. Because there are a lot of hairs, there are a lot of sebaceous glands, and this sebaceous gland can called sebaceous cyst. Second, what is the second layer? Connective tissue. What it is? Fibrous. So because it is fibrous, the fibers are attached to the blood vessels. So blood vessels cannot retract. So there is profuse bleeding in case of injury of the skull. So their pressure has to be given. So if you find any patient who is bleeding, so with injury to the skull, so first thing you have to do is apply pressure. That is why you must have seen that they in case a person gets injury to the skull, they put a bandage which goes around the skull like this, because that applies pressure. The third layer is aponeurosis and muscle. The name of the aponeurosis is epicranial aponeurosis, which is the third layer. And the name of the muscle is occipitofrontalis. It has an occipital belly, which is on the posterior aspect, and it has a frontal belly, which is on the anterior aspect. The occipital belly is attached to the lateral part of the superior nuchal lines, the lateral two-thirds, and the frontal belly is attached to the skin. Now, because of this, what happens is, because it is attached to the skin and not to the skull, the fourth layer becomes continuous with that of the loose air, which is fourth layer, which is loose areolar tissue. The loose areolar tissue of the skull becomes continuous with the loose areolar tissue of the face, and because of that, any bleeding in the fourth layer comes on the face and accumulates around the eye, and that is called as black eye. Black eye. So that is the applied anatomy of the third layer. Applied anatomy of the fourth layer. Fourth layer is loose areolar tissue and it has emissary veins running from the fourth layer, piercing the skull and going inside the skull. So therefore, these emissary veins, all they can carry the infection of from the fourth layer of scalp inside the skull also. Therefore, this is called as dangerous area of the scalp. So that's the applied anatomy. Fifth layer is pericranium. It is firmly attached along the sutures, loosely attached to the bone. So sometimes if there is a fracture of the skull and there is bleeding inside, this blood will come and accumulate below the pericranium if pericranium is not torn. If pericranium is not torn. And then the hematoma will take shape of the bone and that is called as cephalohematoma. Cephalohematoma. That is the applied anatomy of the fifth layer. So even in case of applied anatomy, you can write layer wise applied anatomy. In the fourth layer, there is one more applied anatomy concept and that is called as safety valve hematoma. Safety valve hematoma. I'll try to explain to you what is safety valve hematoma. In case there is a fracture of the skull and blood comes in the fourth layer, okay, the blood starts flowing into the fourth layer. So whether it is good or bad is a question. So you may feel that yeah, the blood is coming out of the skull, it is bad. No, it is good, because if there would have been bleeding inside the skull and there is no fracture, the intracranial pressure will rise. Intracranial pressure will rise and that can compress the brain. So in case there is bleeding inside the skull, it is always better that a person also gets a fracture and that blood comes to line the fourth layer. So till the patient reaches the hospital, he gets a window period. Till the fourth layer is full of blood, the intracranial pressure will not rise. And that concept is called as a safety valve hematoma. The safety valve hematoma is a kind of a condition which we say where there is injury to the skull, there is intracranial bleeding, and there is fracture of the skull and the pericranium is also torn and the blood starts flowing into the fourth layer. That is good because that does not allow the intracranial bleed to increase the intracranial pressure, because now blood is flowing out. So intracranial pressure will not rise and patient gets a window period to reach the hospital. So till the fourth layer is full, the intracranial pressure will not rise. That concept is called as safety valve hematoma. With that, now we move on to the blood supply of the skull. Now, suppose there are two arteries which are branches of ophthalmic artery, which is a branch of internal carotid artery. These two branches run like this, and their names are supraoptic and supratrochlear. Supratrochlear and supraoptic. Okay, so they are above the eyelid. Supraoptic and supratrochlear. These both are branches of ophthalmic artery. These both are branches of ophthalmic artery, which is a branch. This ophthalmic artery is a branch of internal carotid artery. Then there are two more branches. One is superficial temporal artery. Superficial temporal artery. This superficial temporal artery is a branch of external carotid artery. Is a branch of external carotid artery. All of us have studied the common carotid artery in the thorax, and this common carotid artery divides into external carotid and internal carotid. So here we are seeing anastomosis of external and internal carotid in the skull. Then there is this posterior auricular artery. Posterior auricular artery. And then there is occipital artery. Occipital artery. These all are branches of external carotid artery. So the scalp is supplied by 5 arteries: supraoptic, supratrochlear, both branches of ophthalmic artery, which is a branch of internal carotid artery. Then 3 branches of external carotid artery: superficial temporal, posterior auricular, and occipital artery. These are branches of external carotid artery. With that, we can say that scalp is a site of anastomosis of external carotid artery and internal carotid. Now let us see the venous drainage. Venous drainage of scalp. The venous drainage of the scalp is as follows. Okay. Now what happens is the supraoptic and the supratrochlear, they unite along the angle of the eye to form what is called as angular vein. The angular vein. Angular vein. This angular vein continues down as facial vein. This angular vein continues down as facial vein. Now here what happens is near the parotid gland, so what I have drawn here is not the ear but more of parotid gland. In the parotid gland, the maxillary and superficial, the maxillary vein and superficial temporal vein, they unite to form a vein which is called as retromandibular vein. Retromandibular vein. Retromandibular. Now this vein divides into anterior and posterior branch. Anterior and posterior branch. It's a very rare phenomenon where a vein is dividing. Okay, normally arteries divide. Here we see the retromandibular vein divides into anterior and posterior branch. This anterior branch unites with facial to form common facial vein. Anterior branch of the retromandibular unites with facial vein to form common facial vein, and this common facial vein will drain into the internal jugular vein. This drains into internal jugular common facial vein, internal jugular. Now what happens to the posterior branch of the retromandibular? It unites with the posterior auricular vein. It unites with the posterior auricular vein. It unites with the posterior auricular vein to form external jugular vein. This external jugular vein comes down and drains into subclavian vein. Okay, it drains into subclavian vein. So we have supratrochlear and supraoptic vein uniting to form angular vein. This angular vein continues down as facial vein. This facial vein unites with the anterior branch of retromandibular vein to form internal jugular vein. Now, what happens is maxillary vein unites with superficial temporal vein to form retromandibular vein, and retromandibular vein has an anterior division and a posterior division. Anterior division unites with the facial vein to form common facial vein, which drains into internal jugular vein. Posterior division of retromandibular unites with posterior auricular vein to form external jugular vein, which drains into subclavian. Now talking about lymphatic drainage. The lymphatic drainage of the skull, it drains into mainly into preauricular or preauricular lymph nodes. It drains into preauricular lymph nodes. Okay, which are there on the parotid gland. Hmm? This is I'm talking about the anterior. Anteriorly drains into the preauricular group of lymph nodes, and posteriorly it drains into posterior auricular lymph node. Posterior auricular lymph node. Posterior auricular lymph node or occipital lymph nodes. Now coming to the last part, and that is the nerves. Nerves supplying the skull. Nerves supplying the skull. Okay, so skull, nerve supply. Now, if you look at the skull, from a superior aspect, okay. So what happens is here we have two nerves. Here we have two nerves, supratrochlear and supraoptic. Supratrochlear and supraoptic. You know, these are branches of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal. So this looks like blood supply. Then there is zygomaticotemporal. Zygomaticotemporal. This is branch of maxillary. Zygomaticotemporal. Then there is auriculotemporal. Auriculotemporal nerve is a branch of mandibular, which is, so you can see this is branch of ophthalmic, this is branch of maxillary, this is branch of mandibular. So the trigeminal nerve is supplying the skull through its various branches. Supratrochlear, supraoptic, these are branches of ophthalmic division of the trigeminal. Zygomaticotemporal is maxillary division of trigeminal, and auriculotemporal is the mandibular division of trigeminal. And and here, suppose the ear is here. So this whole thing I'm talking about, we are looking from the superior aspect. The ear actually has come little backwards. So I'll draw here again. Supraoptic, supratrochlear, zygomaticotemporal, auriculotemporal, and the temporal branch of facial. So suppose the ear is here. Okay. Now this is anterior, this is posterior. Look, you are looking from the top. Now let us see what are the branches posteriorly. Posteriorly is the posterior division of the greater auricular nerve. So basically posterior nerves, you have to remember, it is by auricular and occipital. So here is greater auricular, then is lesser occipital, greater auricular, lesser occipital, greater occipital, and the motor. Like here the motor branch was temporal branch of facial. Here the motor is posterior auricular branch of facial. So there are posterior auricular branch of facial. So looks little complicated, but again I'll revise for you. Anteriorly in the nerve supply, there are 4 sensory nerves plus 1 motor. And posteriorly in the nerve supply also, there are 4 sensory nerves and 1 motor. So what are the 4 sensory nerves on the anterior aspect? Supraoptic, supratrochlear, and zygomaticotemporal, and auriculotemporal. Zygomaticotemporal is a branch of maxillary. These are branches of ophthalmic. This auriculotemporal is branch of mandibular. And there is only one motor, and that is a temporal branch of facial. So that is the only one motor. Remaining 4: supraoptic, supratrochlear. Supratrochlear is actually medial. Supratrochlear, supraoptic, zygomaticotemporal, auriculotemporal. Posterior to the ear is greater auricular. Okay. Then lesser occipital. Then greater occipital, and then there is third occipital also. Okay. So greater auricular, lesser occipital, greater occipital, third occipital. These are all sensory, and there is one motor, that is the posterior auricular branch of facial. Posterior auricular branch of facial. So there are four sensory nerves anteriorly, four sensory nerves posteriorly, and one motor nerve anteriorly and one motor nerve posteriorly. So that is about the nerve supply of the skull. Applied anatomy layer wise, I have already told you. So I stop here as regarding the topic of scalp is concerned.